I should start, as is usual, by sharing my views on GCOM, since that issue is foremost in the minds of most Guyanese. They're worried about whether the elections would be free and fair. Many of them are worried about the timeline for elections and whether, knowing the history of APNU, they're going to try to delay the elections again. And I want to assure everyone that in spite of the fact that we raise concerns every week about the elections, that we are working assiduously and we're covering every base to ensure that the elections are transparent. And I know for a fact that the international community is heavily engaged in the process to ensure free and fair elections in Guyana. So since the last time we met, I gather now the government has finally relented and issued a letter of invitation to the European Union, to the Carter Center, and to some other organizations to observe the elections. And most of these organizations shall be in Guyana before the elections and on election day. Apart from that, there has been progress with getting the people installed in GCOM, the external advisors for quality control. We still have one setback in the IT department, where there has been a marked reluctance to bring in someone to have an oversight there. But I think that matter would be resolved too. So we'd have two sets of oversight. Oversight on a polling day from external observers as well as local observers. And we have an international presence in the machinery itself to ensure quality control. So we're extremely pleased how things are evolving in that regard. As it relates to the ID, we are very happy too that people are not going to be disenfranchised because they don't pick up their ID. That would have been illegal, and that matter seems to have been resolved now. It's no longer an issue. The key issue here is about the house-to-house data. And GCOM, as you heard from the commissioners, when they came out of the meeting, I think Mr. Vincent Alexander was a little shocked when asked by the reporters. Actually, he didn't know what to say. So he had to admit that they found multiple hits in the house-to-house data. But if you want to get a more accurate picture, you can read what Commissioner Gunraj explained to the press. So he explained to the press that from the 365,000 persons that were sent up there, those who were registered in the house-to-house process, they were sent up, their fingerprints were sent up to be matched against the database, the NRR, that 305,000 were found. So they are both on the NRR and house-to-house. And about 60,000 were not found. So these are ostensibly new people. New people. Of that, I'm not going to go into great detail on it. Of that, 37,300 were category A, above 18 years old, and 22,600 below 18 years old, of the 60,000 that they found as new registrants. Remember, in the house-to-house process, you register people from 14. So for the purpose of analysis here and for voting, we should deal with that category, category A, which was 37,394. That is what when they cross-matched the fingerprint, they did not discover these people. So they treated them as new registrants. Now, we knew that they were not all new, because some of the people that were considered new in the matching of the fingerprint, they were already on the voters list. And we had always argued about errors in cross-matching, because inputting error, mixing up fingerprints, etc. So apparently, GCOM itself, the Secretariat, decided to take the 37,000 now and run it against the NRR, using first name, middle name, and date of birth. And they found another 17,000 that the fingerprinting, when they cross-match fingerprints, found that these were new people. So GCOM found they were already on their database, the NRR. So that brings us down now to 20,000. Because of the 37,000, they found 17,000. So that brings us down to 17,000. And of the 20,000, there are others who are already registered back in the claims and objection. So they were registered as new registrants in the house-to-house, but were registered through the claims and objection period again. So if you take those out, then the number comes down even further. So what I gather now, because of this confusion, GCOM is manually going through something we suggested right at the beginning. They're manually taking the PLE and the house-to-house and crossing out names to come up to the real number of new registrants. So, as we pointed out at the very beginning, there would be duplications. In fact, in some cases we heard multiple registration, one person registering 8 times and stuff like that. So we discovered people, like the last time I spoke here, who had been registered in addresses where they never lived, and large numbers, like 7 in one house that they never lived at. And so this just proves our point. So we are very pleased now with the level of scrutiny that the data is getting. And the Commission is paying attention to this. And if I already said that they shouldn't use the data at all because it was never tested. But if they do discover a number of new registrants there, because we don't want in the PPP to disenfranchise a single person, that we are prepared to accept them, provided that these, after they cleanse the list and come up with this subset of new registrants, that we have a joint exercise with all the political parties and GCOM to verify their existence as new people. Only then their names could be included. And so, but we see movement in that direction, so we are hopeful, because they're making some attempts to clean up the house-to-house data and to really get to those people. So we are hopeful about this. I brought to the international community the question of the abuse of resources that continues, and we have looked at the timeline. So far, all of these activities fit well into the timeline, because we believe that elections could have been held in December, early January latest, but since it was delayed until March, they do have a lot of room there. And so we have looked at the timeline prepared by GCOM, and these activities are well within the timeline. So you can go through this detailed level of scrutiny of the database and the voters list, and yet have national and regional elections by March 2nd. So I want to assure people of that. The only unknown variable is when Mr. Granger dissolves the parliament. And we've been hearing mixed signals, but we're not going to allow him to get away from that commitment. And I'm sure that the international community would be intolerant to that too, as we would be in the PPP. So I want to assure people that in spite of all of the issues that we keep raising, that we are paying attention to the matter fully. We've already started moving I spoke with some of the not some of the consultants, people who are going to be working, assisting GCOM, and including GCOM, when we met with the chair, and we pointed out several issues that have to be addressed. That clear manuals have to be done early to allow the political parties to train their polling agents. That we must have, as I mentioned the last time, strong safeguards on elections day. We must avoid capricious action by random placement of officials, that there must be strong penalties for anyone who violates or engages in an electoral offense, which is a criminal offense. And we are paying careful attention to the recruitment of staff, that people who are political in nature, we've seen is some of the people that they're proposing to recruit or now campaign with APNU. So we're going to be objecting to those people, because you can't be overtly campaigning for a political party and then be part of the machinery. We expect people have a right to vote however they want to, the staff at GCOM included, but they can't be seen as overtly campaigning for political parties and then be part of a process where they have to act objectively, impartially. And so people who are part of overt campaigns must not be part of the machinery of GCOM. That's the only way you will safeguard the integrity of the process. So I want to remain hopeful, and we keep working at this on a daily basis. And I want to assure people we are working hard to ensure that in every polling place that we in the People's Progressive Party will have strong polling agents who will ensure that there's integrity there. Or if there is any attempt to violate the integrity of the process, then that attempt will not go unexposed on election day. The second thing I want to talk about is the so-called negotiations between APNO and AFC. So it's a recurring thing, but there's something that really struck me. We had pointed out a long time ago when they were speaking about this, that the entire negotiation was about securing perks. And this came to pass from the snippets of information we're getting, because they promised to issue a joint statement. The joint statement has not appeared as yet. So we are still in the dark a bit about what was agreed to, what compromises were made. But from the little that we gathered is that the ministries, Ramjatan said on the November 22nd that the ministries that they will retain will be natural resources, public security, public infrastructure, public telecommunications. You see a pattern here. The top leaders of the AFC preserving themselves. Trotman, Ramjatan, Cathy Hughes, and Patterson, looking out for themselves. So he confirmed this. These are the four ministries that they want and that they agreed that they will get. So they're looking out for themselves. Never mind the ordinary members of the AFC, the dwindling numbers, because there are not many now. But they're looking out for themselves. So that is very apparent. It's very evident to the country that they entered into the negotiations to preserve perks and they've succeeded in doing that for themselves, preserving the parks for themselves. But one thing is more, which is not, I haven't seen much editorializing on it, is what has happened, that in exchange for preserving their own parks, they have given up now, they have become further immersed, subsumed by APNU. In the last elections, to preserve, since they were contesting on a single ticket, therefore they're not two political parties, there would be one list of candidates going to the elections, they sought to put in place an independent or so-called independent, impartial, not belonging to either of the party mechanism to preserve the balance. That is by the appointment of Professor Harold Lutchman as head of the list, and the deputy head of the list was Jean LaRose from the APA. So that's what they did, the last elections. So that nobody could, if you go, and these would be the people who would guarantee basically that when the names are submitted to go to Parliament, that the accord that was signed prior to that, that accord would be observed and the agreements would be kept there. So what happened, what has happened now? What has happened is that they gave that up. And guess who is going to head the list now? David Granger. So now there is no independent, this agreement, when it had an independent arbiter or a group of people, two persons, who will then decide on the candidates, their MPs. Granger could not have decided, nor the AFC. Or they submitted lists, and these people would obviously have said, oh, both sides agree with this, then we'll go with it. Now this power has been transferred directly to Granger. That is the snippet we got confirmed. We don't know what the entire agreement is yet. So Granger now heads the list. So Granger will ultimately decide who goes to Parliament. So, you know Granger with agreements and his credibility in that. And he's already, so if Granger decides that he does not want one of their MPs to go to Parliament, he just would not agree to it. Because he now makes the decision, final decision. So accord or no accord. And this is a crucial point that they gave up. This is the balance. In fact, that retained the individuality of the party. That was a safeguard, a guarantee that they would have an independent existence, and that they would have gone to they could have had another voice in the Parliament. That's why I said they're fully immersed now, subsumed by APNU, subsumed. And therefore, they don't have any guarantee that anything that is said to them will be in Parliament. But they were willing to trade all of that, their independence, so-called independence, etc. And this safeguard just for perks, to retain their jobs to themselves. And this is a huge issue that I have not seen many people look at, editorialize, because those are the only two little snippets we got that they confirmed. That there are 4 positions and that Granger will now head the list. But I'm sure that when the whole accord comes out, we will see more reprehensible features of an agreement that is struck to preserve a bunch of people in power who have no concerns for the people of this country. Another issue I'd like to talk about is I noticed Gaisuko, there's been a call for a salary increase for sugar workers by GAU. And I've seen the prevarication in the government as to why it cannot do this. The board must make that decision, etc. But let me just say to you that this government has stripped the assets of Gaisuko, the board, the company, and transferred the assets to NISIL. And they are busy disposing a lot of these assets for which they earn money. So the money comes to NISIL now. That's one. They also pledge these assets and raise the bond. Oh, I think 17 billion of the 30 billion has been disbursed to them. And it's like a black hole. The country, nobody in Guyana, none of us know how they're spending this money. It's just in NISIL and nobody knows. We don't know, taxpayers. So they do have the money there raised for Gaisuko on using Gaisuko's assets as the pledge, which was transferred to them. Why can't they use some of these resources? They don't have to go back to Parliament. They don't have to use the contingency fund. It doesn't have to be part of the budget. They can easily transfer some of the money that they're sitting on, paying 4.75% interest on, not using the money, sitting on this money now. They could easily transfer it to Gaisuko and finance the salary increase. And they have been transferring, from what NISIL says, in the fight between Gaisuko and NISIL, they said they've been transferring some money to them. So this is nothing. So it is disingenuous to argue that the board must make that decision when the government has made every decision for Gaisuko, from the closure to the sending home of the staff, to the transfer of their assets, to the raising of their bond, to deciding they want to spend this on a white sugar factory. Now, we don't know how much money, but if they spend the bond on this, then this would be another corrupt project. Another corrupt project. We're not even sure about whether it will go. They're disposing of Gaisuko's assets, selling off lands, the machinery, the factory they sold out for scrap iron, and they're receiving large sums of money. And this money goes somewhere, and why can't they use it to pay the sugar workers too? So it is just that they don't want to give the sugar workers an increase in salaries. And for your information, whilst they boast about salary increases 70%, and it's not 70%, it's just that's a false figure that Jordan pulled out of the air. But for the public servants. But Gaisuko workers have not gotten a salary increase in 5 years. Zero. They've not gotten. So if there was any concern for workers or justice, then they would do this now, since they're so concerned about workers. But you remember Ramjatan betrayed all of this when he said, oh, those people support the PPP. Not all of them support the PPP. Not all of them are Indo-Guyanese. 25% of the sugar belt is Afro-Guyanese who work in those factories and the fields too. But they see things only in a partisan way. Only in a partisan way. And so we believe the sugar workers should be paid, get a salary increase, and we believe there is a means of financing this now without having to go to any fund. Like to Parliament to appropriate the money or anything else. The money is just sitting there waiting to be used, and we're paying interest on it. And we would still like to find out how much assets they have disposed and how much money they have raised for Gaisuko. This brings me also to the whole issue of the the opening of these projects. So in Port Kaituma, which now has blackout from what I gather a month, and the cost of fuel has gone up. I dealt with this issue the last time, that they said they spent $400 million there on some roads between Port Kaituma and Mabaruma, but they're collecting $1.2 billion in taxes. And I saw the newspaper report speaking about the $5,000 per barrel of fuel, which was zero that residents in that area had to pay before this government took office. And so they're raising $1.2 billion from Region 1, spend back $400 million, a quarter of that in the region for on the road, a couple of roads, and then say that people have made progress. When you take from their pockets 800 million more than what you spend back in the area. And it's absolutely same thing in Lethem. That's what they did. These regions were basically not paying taxes. They've gone in, collected more taxes, and spent a fraction of the taxes back in the region, and then claim that people should laud them for it. In Port Kaituma, people are worse off now. Apart from the immediate concerns about rising cost of living and blackout, they've lost jobs, their access to services, government services, including healthcare, has deteriorated enormously. Enormously. And so Lethem, we saw that. We saw a bunch of ministers, 10 of them went to open a single road, spent over $12 million. The money that they spent to open that road in Lethem could build a couple of roads in communities that just to go up, fly them up, they took the entire state apparatus there, and then they started, and so I saw some of the most ridiculous reports coming out from the region, and the region telling people like Annette Ferguson. I saw a Chronicle report. In her outreach, it says, the thing started with a good tongue lashing from the minister. That's how the story starts. But Annette Ferguson is a disciple of Walter Lawrence. So she at least not beating them over their head. She giving them the tongue lashing, the people in the area. And so then she says government would have already played its role in providing funding through the budget for these projects. So when people raise their concerns, guess who they blame? They didn't provide any money to the budget. I know Brian Alicock, the regional chairman, and the other councillors there have been writing this government over and over about concerns raised by the villagers. They put projects in their budget that have been cut out of their budget. And Annette Ferguson goes to the region and lies to the people in the communities that, oh, we put the money in the budget, blame the region because and the region is controlled by the PPP. Blame the PPP. So this is their standard thing now. They go in Region 1 and say, blame the region because it is the PPP people holding up the projects. There is no money for it. For example, they would spend millions flying a minister in. Brian Alcock once said to me he wanted some food flown into an area. Couldn't get the money to get the flight for food, but a minister could fly in and drop kites off. Fly to a village and drop off some couple kites just for when they knew we were in there on a trip. And then Granger could take 5 planes and fly into a village for half an hour in the hinterland. And all of these parasites flying in everywhere, every week into the communities. So that is it, lying again to the communities, going and blaming the regions now. And Annette Ferguson should have said to them, she's the one who got the 3 house lots from the PPP, right? Well, that were developed under the PPP, 3 house lots. We don't know how much she paid for those house lots too. And she built a huge house on all 3 lots and said you couldn't divide the house, it couldn't fit on one lot. So she had to get 3 lots. This is the same man at Ferguson. Goes into the area and holier than thou, talking about corruption and PPP. And this is the nonsense. I saw Ramjatan going to Crowdar and speaking to people. These are kids, telling them you must join the police force. Join the police force. With him as minister, their children saying, no, something wrong here. So, and that brings me to the police force. There have been lots of allegations swirling now about the leadership of the force. And these things have to be put to rest because they undermine the credibility of the force. And also, since Granger, his only thing, when he, first of all, he didn't acknowledge there was crime in the country. He said, oh, I'm not worried, we're finding solutions, and the crime is gone down. Now that's a lie. And we know that even now you've had more murders in his period than the worst period in our history. In what he called the trouble period, we've had more murders in his tenure than in that period. And so we know that for sure. The whole country knows. He doesn't know this. He says, but his solution was, I've appointed 4 deputy commissioners. And you can't have several of those deputy commissioners that were the showpiece being embroiled in a whole pile of scandals without. So I wonder, remember the president spoke about incorruptibility. That's why he took a long time. These matters have to be investigated fully, but I know there will be a cover-up. So Ramjatan is a failure. Now he wants to shake up the prosecutorial services to fight crime. His failure, he keeps passing it off to everyone else. It's a lack of commitment and policy making and direction that's causing things to deteriorate, and low morale among the police and the law enforcement officers, most of them. You can't take away their money and PR it away in the Chronicle to say, oh, they're better off now. They're better off now. The policemen know they're not better off. They took away their money and said it's a bribe, 1 month tax-free salary. And you're going to PR it away? There's demoralization. You can't interfere with promotions. You can't place a partisan like Paul Slow to head the Police Service Commission, and with Felix interfering on a daily basis, going across there to give directions to people at mid-level, undermining the authority of senior officers. And based on how they perceive if someone is impartial or they think pro-PPP, then try to not promote them, discriminate against them, post them out of town. This is what's happening there. It's an environment. They've killed professionalism in the police force. And this all happened under Ramjatan's watch. He even tried to influence the Police Service Commission. You recall that. That was in the past. Now he doesn't have to do that. Paul Slow is there. He just pick up the phone and call him. And so this is what's happening. So he mentioned Soku. That's why Soku failed with the cases. Soku failed because it was a political witch hunt. They decided on the people who they wanted to go after and then send Soku to gather evidence. Now, rather than allow the evidence to lead to the crime or the individuals, they did it the other way around, all for political purposes. And by the way, I heard some information. Why do you think there is no movement at Soku now on all this corruption case and the investigations there? Because Soku was paying Congress Place money to hire 20 persons who they call intelligence officers for several years, who were deployed around the country. And so all of that will come out in the investigations. 20 persons were being paid, received money from Soku to Congress Place, and they said they were hiring them as intelligence officers. So it was even their corruption. So the police force will continue to have a government that denies the increase in crime. If you can't accept it, then you can't fix it. That it's a reality of our lives. That crime has increased. It's ravaging people right across the country, loss of lives, even petty crime. And that's the only way you can fix it. And you have to give the police the tools to do so. But this government cannot do it because they're already compromised. I noticed also that the Walter Rodney issue has been in the public domain for a while, and I just want to say that, again, you can't PR a vindictive act. And it's sickening to watch David Hines and the others grovel, where they like almost crawl on their bellies just to maintain the perks of being in this coalition, when Walter Rodney was such an important figure for that party. For that party, the people who were around him don't defend him anymore. No, they don't anymore. They just are. I can't even find words to describe this sort of groveling. So again, he doesn't know how this happened. Oh, the PPP didn't gazette this. If we didn't gazette it when we renamed the archives in 2008, when I was president, that was the name there, Walter Rodney Archives. That was the name on the board, everybody. Fix it by just gazetting the thing. If we made an error. You don't remove it because we didn't gazette it. They've been busy renaming almost everything, the PPP. But you could put Granger's name on 100 buses. Are those being gazetted? Are those state assets? Are those state assets? Now hundreds of buses. It's 12 buses and 3 boats and a couple bicycles and a couple things like that. They put them on all the thing. David G. That has been gazetted. Are those state assets? You can put that there, but you can't gazette one thing for Walter Rodney, the archives. And this sad excuse is, oh, it doesn't hold Walter Rodney documents alone, it's the National Archives. It's a sad, sad day. And I know how disgusting. For a long time I lost faith in this WP, because I know when we were trying to get that commission of inquiry going since when I was president, that the Rupert Upnarine, along with few others, sabotaged it, openly sabotaged the commission of inquiry. And we've seen them at this. So all of this, and by the way, after that was exposed, so the DPI, the same group that put out that I told public servants not to collect their money, we're going to reverse it, the fake news. Now they said that Jagdeo plans to rename QC. That's the new one, and call it Cherry Jagan School. And Jagdeo is going to rename bishops and call it Janet Jagan School. That's the new thing they're circulating now. It is. And you have a couple of people call me, and I had to say to them, don't be so stupid to even think that would even, can't you read and understand what's going on, that this bunch of people have nothing to offer Guyana except fake news? They don't have any plans for the future. They've failed on all their promises. They're a corrupt bunch. They can't look out for our country. They're giving away our assets. That's all they can survive on fake news. We didn't do it for 20-something years. I was president for 12 years, renamed the place. Now we're going to rename QC as, or bishops. It's pure nonsense. That's all they thrive on. And the sad thing about it is this is being paid for by taxpayers, the fake news, because it's coming straight from DPI through fake profiles. This is what is happening. They're really, really sad bunch. I saw Norton struggling to talk, and now he's gone back to 1976 when Burnham introduced free education. Well, when Burnham left, we were starving too. And we had one of the highest debts in the world when we took office. We were declared ineligible to vote, to borrow. But if you have to go back to 1976 to find inspiration, now, God, a lot of time has passed since then, 1976 to now. People were not, most of you in here weren't born then. That's all they have, nothing new. He gone back. He can't find nothing to say about this government. Now, anything they have done, because they have increased university fees by 35%, and they took away the school kids grant. They took away that. And he gone back to 1976. Oh, this bunch of people have nothing to offer to our people across the country. APNU supporters, PBB supporters, everybody. So it's very interesting. And I'm very happy that Stacia has responded in a letter, and in his response he said, he made it clear that we remove discretionary approval of tax concessions, and in 2003, where the president could have remitted, that was the era when I was president, and the president before that, 2003, could have remitted any person taxes. And we removed that power of the president. And even when we had difficulties and it was reintroduced to the Minister of Finance, but with safeguards in place. Nobody wants to take away the tax-free concessions from our public servants. We want more of our people to get, we want all the public entities to get salary increases, and if they want to do it tax-free, fine with us. We don't want to take it away. But the problem is that this administration is illegal, and therefore their powers are truncated. That's the point. But we don't want people to lose their tax-free salary. We want public servants to get their salaries. We want the people in other entities to get their salary increases too, not just in the central government, but in the entire public sector. But I'm pleased about what they talk about, how we moved the approval of concessions. This is something we did, moved it away from the Minister of Finance and the presidency into the GRA. They have moved back to discretionary approval of concessions. So I was quite interested when Winston Jordan said that Mr. Badal got billions and billions of dollars of concessions. First time we're hearing this. Had Badal not formed a political party, we wouldn't have heard this. And they couldn't find the billions to give, just 1.5 billion, 1.6 billion to keep the 10,000 grant to 167,000 kids. But they can give Badal billions and billions of tax concessions. And we would have never known this had Badal not formed a political party. So this is quite interesting. I'm waiting to see how it evolves. I'm not saying much more now. I'm just sitting and waiting to see how this one evolves. So when I told you about the last time that we had a hauling out of the economy, and that there is a visible decline, people say it on the streets in terms of jobs, no money in circulation, higher crime, higher cost of living, etc., selling out. But there is also invisible decline that is taking place without us being aware of it. And so if you look at Lands and Survey, you see from 2014, this chart will show you where we are going now with Lands and Survey. It tells the story. These numbers were taken from the estimates. There are deficits in these areas. Lands and Surveys. This is the 2014 to 2018, the 5 years. Because 2014 was the last year we passed the budget. This is Guyana Geology and Mines Commission. You see the pattern there? This is the Gold Board. Demerara Harbor Bridge. Guyana Forestry Commission. Central Housing and Planning Ministry. Guyana Gold Reserves. You see a pattern. You see the pattern here. This is happening and we don't even aware of it because we don't pay attention to it. So we are seeing the other outward manifestation of it, of things, but we're not seeing what's happening. And I didn't even go for GWI because Ed Hill wrote that letter. GWI is practically bankrupt too. Not just these entities, we just did these to show you, but almost every state entity, GPL going down the route, is almost going bankrupt. GWI, I just showed you a few. This is the hauling out for the future. If God forbid that they win these elections, which will not happen, this is what we're going to face with. Just using it all up. And this is worrisome. So I want to just end by looking at a couple of things. CARICOM, I've noticed that the Caribbean community has issued a statement through St. Lucia, the OAS, on Dominica. Now, Dominica recently had some troubles, electoral troubles, and the statement was about constitutional disruption and all of that. And in Guyana's case, we have had this almost a year, even an illegal government, and CARICOM has not even issued a statement as yet. Nor none of the heads. I see them commenting on Dominica, but not Guyana. It's utterly disgusting. And then I see that CARICOM now discussing about what to do with GPL. So they can't find answers to the horrendous blackout here, and we can't get explanations from the minister about the future, nor the board, nor the CEO. So now CARICOM official, Mr. Gardner, who is the program manager for energy and head of the energy unit at the CARICOM, talking about what to do with GPL. It has nothing to do, this is partisan. You can talk about the regional programs, but not to get, this is almost getting involved in our affairs. This is the level of duplicity that goes on in CARICOM, and that's putting it mildly. I see now the Minister of Foreign Affairs. She can't even address the issues at Foreign Affairs. She's leading a flood assessment at Maikoni. And this is just a PR op. What are they going to give to the people? How are they going to get compensation? Are they going to take the money from the contingent fund? And we don't know how much money they took from the contingency fund, how it's spent, because BK, I gather, got the emergency works, but Patterson has a hand in this, and literally has a hand in it. And so that's what doesn't inspire confidence. But what are you going to do for the people? Not just do a tour and a photo up in Maikoni. People are suffering, they need help now. It's a post-flood situation that matters. People have lost their livelihoods. How are you going to help them in practical terms? And then one other thing I deal with, it is for a long time now, a lot of been spoken about the airport. So Patterson said he doesn't have the contract, but they have issued a ton of change orders. So I don't know if you don't have the contract, how you issue change orders. But let me just say, somebody sent me a copy, an electronic copy of the contract. So I'm not going to commit to release it yet because it has some parts, the appendices didn't come. So let me just show you. I'm going to share out this. Can you please pass this around to the reporters so you actually see what the building looked like. This is page 25 of the contract. And this is how the airport should have been. You see a modern airport here with a terminal building. Yes, just pass it to the reporter. This is page 25 of the contract. Look at the difference between this building and the one that's being built now. Secondly, this would give you another page of the airport, the contract 18 of 75. This will give you a layout. And so this is how the airport should have been. This is the diagram here. That was the drawing. You get an idea. Huge, modern terminal building and eight air bridges here. This is in the original contract. They're part of the contract. So Patterson now must explain how this has morphed into what we have now, a rehab project that is, they're renting toilets and stuff like that to use. Yes, you have to walk with your own toilet in this airport, the new airport. It's called the Conservation Airport now. So when you're traveling. So this is just to give you a little indication of what has been happening. You look at that and then you will actually see what the changes have been. And in fact, they have increased the cost because the change orders, from what I gather, I haven't gotten the detail as yet, increased the cost of the project and reduced the scope of the work and change it from a modern terminal building that is part of the contract. This is a page in the contract, and you see it's initial. The pages are all initialed here, so they are part of the contract. This is the artist's rendering of what we should have gotten and what we are getting today. So please give it to your editors. Thank you. Is there any question?
Thank you, President. I'm not sure if you addressed this earlier, but at the post-parliament press briefing today, Director General Harman indicated that Parliament will not be dissolved by December 2nd. How do you feel about that?
It doesn't have to be dissolved on the 2nd of December, but it has to be dissolved before nomination day. So there is some room there, but knowing this government, they'd wait until we have a couple of protests and they get condemned by the international community to do it, knowing them. But I hope that they don't plan to utilize the parliament, to do. I hear all sorts of things about wanting to increase appropriations and stuff, because they're running out of money in the ministries. What I gather, money has been used from other accounts for the outreach and the travel and all of that of ministers and to buy material. So heads that had budget have now been depleted, and therefore they now need money to replenish those heads because they've illegally used the money. So we're watching that carefully, and in some ministries this is already happening. So it doesn't have to happen on December 2nd. Does not have to happen on that date, but it has to be done before nomination day.
One agency which has indicated that they might have problems with financing is GECO. As we go into 2020, while sums of money were allocated for the holding of the election, in 2019. So going into 2020, GECO would have no money. And there has been talk of using Parliament to appropriate such sums.
No, that was the old excuse. And then they went and they appropriated another $3 billion. So they had $5.3 billion appropriated in November 2018. As part of that was to do, $3 billion was set aside for the house-to-house exercise, but the House exercise was truncated. They argued that they needed another $3 billion. So they got $8.3 billion. When the last count we had, the budget that they prepared and sent to the commissioners, had elections being done below $3 billion, and you had access to $8 billion. And these are money because they're constitutional agencies. The law says that after the second month after the passage of the budget, there's, or the appropriate, in this case, the supplementary, they're supposed to remit in full the money to the constitutional agency. So GCOM should have in its bank account now over I don't know how much they use. They probably use about 2 or 3 billion, but maybe in excess of $5 billion. And they need only two to hold elections. So they should have in their account. If they don't have it in their account, it means Jordan is breaking the law by not releasing the money to them. Because when the amendment was made for constitutional agencies' budget to be a direct charge on the consolidated fund, this was what was introduced into the law. So they have all the money. GCOM has made no such request. As far as I know, GCOM has made absolutely no such request. And there would be no request.
For GCOM to return to the fund.
Not if this is a constitutional agency, they can continue to use that. And they can, and secondly, they can use the contingency fund. You don't have to go back to Parliament. You can draw down on the contingency fund. This qualifies as an emergency. But this is another excuse for Granger. They want to go to Parliament to appropriate money for themselves, to continue their campaign, and to replenish money that they stole from other heads that we're going to have trouble in December when people come to get their like material or Christmas parties and all of these things. All of those heads are cleaned out by APNU. It's the ministers drinking and let them, 10 of them, they're gone with their Christmas party for you in the ministries. They already had their party up there for you. Thank you.